This video message is for my professor in the course I'm going to be taking this spring. I just watched your video. Just to give you some background on me, so I was born Spanish Catholic. Mondragon family is my dad's side. Lovatos are my mom's side. The Mondragon family has been in Taos, New Mexico since 1608, before Protestants were in New England, I think, establishing colonies and whatnot. But, yeah, that's how deep the Spanish Catholicism of conquistador families goes back. That's why New Mexico has names like Sangre de Cristo Mountains, Las Cruces, San Francisco is even named after St. Francis, right? San Francisco de Assisi, and look at it now. Anyhow, I have a family history of schizophrenia from the mom, which means I have schizophrenia. Catholicism, just like Christianity, with all due respect, which is due if it's due, and not if it's not, Catholicism is the theft and mutilation of Judaism. So the law of Moses say no intermarriage with the heathen. Well, to the Spaniards, that was the Native Americans. So there's a lot of inbreeding amongst the Spanish conquistador colonies. Native Americans were even worse. The intergenerational incest of Native Americans created things like the Native American pancreas and liver not secreting enzymes necessary to process and metabolize alcohol into sugar. Excuse me. Just had dinner. From being isolated on the Americas for so long, which is why Native Americans have the highest alcohol overdose death rate per ethnicity. Why white people drank alcohol and built ships and conquered continents, whereas Native Americans drank alcohol and traded their land for beads and ended up on reservations, along with diabetes, etc. Now, you can Google Spanish conquistador families, northern New Mexico, genetic disorders, and you'll find a whole host of things. So, my schizophrenia is a gene mutation caused by the incest among both. I did the ancestor DNA. I'm 60% Spanish, 30% Native American, 10%, other various little things here and there. And so, when I was in 5th grade, I had scored gifted and was eligible for grants in a private school. Unfortunately, my parents were corrupted by the drug and sex revolution. They were divorced before I was a year old. My parents knew if I lived in my mom's house with my older gang member brother that my mom had out of wedlock, that I'd have no chance at a future. Unfortunately, my dad, who I get a hereditary high IQ from, my IQ is like 135 to 140, which is why I have good grades in the university school. Liberty University, excuse me. Anyway, he got his degree in philosophy, so he could hardly feed and house himself, let alone me. He couldn't take custody, so they threw my future away. That was my one chance out of poverty because those test scores, I scored gifted, was eligible for grants in a private school, as a poor Hispanic in New Mexico in 1992. That summer, my brother forced marijuana on me. Turns out marijuana activates and exacerbates schizophrenia. You don't need a gene mutation or genetic predisposition like family history of schizophrenia for it. But that doesn't help, it makes it worse. So instead of ending up in college, I spent most of my life homeless and on drugs because of the marijuana, until I electrocuted myself for whales and trees in 2008, self-inflicting 3 amputations, also on my feet, where the electricity grounded out, 70,000 volts. I should have died 1,000 times over. But I was atheist for like 20 years during that, and it took me a long time to figure out that it was marijuana that was causing my psychosis. But eventually, this was in Seattle that I electrocuted myself, and I began to self-educate on neuroscience and psychology because I realized I could not count on anybody, Christians, atheists, you name it. Nobody was helping me with my mental illness to get a diagnosis, treatment, let alone admitting the fact that marijuana was activating and exacerbating my schizophrenia and caused my self-electrocution, etc. So, I read Dr. Albert Ellis, Reason and Emotion and Behavioral Therapy, and that's where I figured out how to isolate and identify environmental stimulus that acts as contributing factors to maladaptive thoughts and behavior. And so I realized the Seattle, secular area, largely very white, liberal, and secular and wealthy, was not an environment that was positively reinforcing of sobriety, abstinence from drugs, monogamy, etc. It's a hypersexualized hookup culture of drug abuse and addiction. So I thought, if I go back into church, right, I created a plan and sort of my ulterior motive that surely Christianity and Christian churches would create this sort of like pocket of morality within the sea of immorality that is our sociocultural atmosphere in the United States due to our current moral decline, which includes a decline in church attendance since the 1960s. It fluctuates, but, you know, it's declining. Anyhow, I was wrong. The first church I attended was an Episcopalian church on the East Coast. They served wine for the sacrament, didn't warn me. Bad alcoholic. I'm sober now since 2018. Yeah. No, 2019, sorry. No, 2018, that's right. Yeah, June 2018. Anyway, so that caused me to relapse. Then I tried a Methodist church in New Mexico, then a Methodist church in Ohio, then an Anglican church in New Mexico, and a bunch of other churches, a whole host of Catholic churches, Protestant churches, all kinds of denominations. My one goal is I wanted to meet Christians who could get me into a community that was drug-free, specifically like a marijuana-free, you know, zone in the United States, a community that didn't do any marijuana, because secondhand marijuana gives me hallucinations, suicidal, homicidal thoughts, etc. And Christianity failed to prevent marijuana from being legalized in all these states, pornography from being legalized in the United States, etc., etc., etc. One of the churches had a guy dealing weed inside the church during service. That was the Anglican church in the South Valley of Albuquerque. Yeah. In this process, my faith in Hashem became genuine, but I began to notice a lot of discrepancies and inconsistencies and contradictions. And so I actually started trying to learn Hebrew to read the original, what you would call the Old Testament. So now I'm on a path towards converting to Judaism. Like the swords were not beaten into plowshares and pruning hooks, and there's a whole bunch of other prophecies Yeshu failed to fulfill. He couldn't be Moshiach, right? There's nothing in the Messianic prophecies that says it'll take 2 tries. If the law of Moses, the old covenant, was fulfilled, then how do the 10 Commandments still apply? Did Jesus say, you know what, we'll get rid of 603 laws, but we'll keep the top 10 so you guys could like eat pork and drive on Shabbat, which is now on Sunday? No. Among many other things. So, thank you for the welcoming video, but I think even Christian scholars agree that he wasn't even born in December 25th. This was in alignment with Roman pagan holidays, like the winter solstice and things like that. So, anyhow, looking forward to the course, and yeah, just FYI. Shema Yisrael.